G'day, folks. Talk to Dr. James Stewart, a specialist in natural medicine, medicinal cannabis, staunch advocate, and really explore the education of it for the individuals that utilise it and need it, depending on their condition, education for clinicians, the authorities, everyone, knowing how it's used, how it affects the body, who can use it when you're looking at cancer, disabilities, nerve pain, chronic pain, PTSD, anxiety. Can you eliminate certain pharmaceuticals if you put this in place? How it affects the body when you utilise it, depending on what percentages you use of THC, CBD. How does it all work? Social and legal changes around it in different states and territories. When you got a prescription, you're on the road and you get pulled over, get a swab test, THC, then what happens? It was great how he really breaks it all down on all facets of medicinal cannabis and where we're headed with this. It was awesome. Enjoyed the yarn. And if you like the podcast, hit that subscribe or follow button. And we've also got a Patreon page. The link is within the description. So if you want to roll with the squad and become a patron, that'd be great. And want to thank our sponsors, Permobil Australia, the greatest electric wheelchairs in the land. Wouldn't be sitting in anything else but these 4 wheels right here. And they've got great assistive tech also. So righto, let's get into it. Dr. James Stewart, thanks for jumping on the podcast and getting ready to have a yarn about, the frontier. Like, it's been around for thousands of years, and where individuals have used it for all types of different reasons when it's got to do with natural medicine. And if we're going down the route of medicinal cannabis. So welcome.
Thanks, Jay. Pleasure to be here, mate.
Yeah, so just want to jump into where the journey started for you, when it's got to do with yourself as a doctor. So when it's got to do with, where'd you get the inspiration from? Was it family, your local GP? Like, where were you drawing all the inspiration from to really kick into gear? Because it's a pretty arduous task to become a doctor and then just, going into your chosen field.
Yeah, I guess I've got a pretty unique story of becoming a doctor. I've kind of essentially lived 2 lives. So prior to becoming a doctor, and probably from the age of 18 up until probably 26, 27, I was just working in nightclubs. I became a DJ, owned a nightclub up in the Sunshine Coast, sold that, went over to England and played all through there, and pretty much just partied my ass off. Really gave everything a red hot go. And it was actually a bit of a light bulb moment after a kind of a very large weekend over in London. Woke up one morning and just went, don't think I can keep doing this. So packed up the bags and came home, and I thought, I'll go back to university. This is back in sort of 06, 07, around there on the Gold Coast, when we just got the Titans, the Gold Coast Suns were starting, we were getting the Commonwealth Games, and I've always sort of been pretty active and fit. So I thought, I'll do something with sport. So I'll go back and do biomedical science and then see where that takes me. It was as the big craze of personal trainers was kicking off and all that. So that was kind of maybe the path I was heading. But literally the very first lecture of my biomedical science degree was human anatomy and physiology. And I've got a neurodivergent, lovely neurospicy ADD brain, probably a little sprinkle of some autism in there as well. And my brain just locked in. The lecture, I was just there the whole time, focused, my brain hyperfixed, and I knew that that's what my brain liked and that this is what I wanted to do. So I pretty much topped every subject for my degree, won a heap of awards at uni, and I wasn't that smart at school, probably because I couldn't apply myself. But just when with a brain like mine, who's a bit neurodivergent, when we find something we like, man, our brain is just a special little special beast. So I got that good of grades that the university said you could get into our medical program if you wanted to. So I was like, DJ to DR to doctor. All right, sweet. So I started on the medical on the medical pathway. Now, the way I ended up in cannabis was, I used to engage in a bit of cannabis when I was younger. Growing up on the Gold Coast, it was kind of everywhere. You have a bit of a chuff and then go for surf and eat some macas and have a chuff and go for surf. Like, it was just what you did. But
party scene.
But I remembered it would slow my brain down. Back then I didn't know I had ADD. It wasn't sort of around then. I was just a hyperactive kid that couldn't focus. And I remember that it would sort of slow me down and make me more comfortable and relax. And then, going back to uni a bit older, I kind of had a bit of worldly experience, and I was kind of always a bit conscious of what I ate and rather seek natural medicines than pharmaceuticals. Sort of, that was the way I kind of looked at my health. And going through med school, it's very, very pharmaceutical heavy. Let's just say that. Not a lot of talks on diet, nutrition, exercise, mindfulness, stretching, all this kind of stuff, hydration that is the foundation of good health. And we don't get taught a lot of that. And even more prevalent when you go and do your hospital years is just, the hospitals are under the pump and it's just a quick, get this person as better as you can, get them out because we need the bed. So you just throw pharmaceuticals at them, which is like a Band-Aid. They go out, sure enough, a couple of months later, the same person comes back with the same thing. And I just remember thinking, I don't think this is the right way to do healthcare. So
just a constant Band-Aid fix,
yeah. There's a saying, and I've said it a few times, is that at some point you've got to stop pulling people out of the water and go upstream and see why they're jumping in. And that's the system of healthcare. Is you got to just, the healthcare system is so under the pump because we don't focus on the foundations of good health. We focus on medicine, which is a Band-Aid, rather than lifestyle, which is the way you live and the things you eat. And that's how you look after your body. So, I was about 4 years into being a GP, and in 2016, medicinal cannabis became legal to be prescribed in Australia. And now I kept an eye on it because there was only one product. A couple of products. It was very hard to get authority to approve that. But around 2018, I prescribed my first cannabis product to a lady because I remember back to when I was a teenager and the cannabis would do something pretty good for me. So she was a lady who couldn't sleep, had been thrown every sleeping pill under the sun, and came and saw me. And I said to her, oh, look, I've got to throw something left field here, right? What do you think about a little bit of cannabis? And she's like, oh, yeah, I grew up in the 60s, no worries. So it was a little oil that you pop under the tongue, and 2 days later I got her approved. 2 days later she came in and just gave me the biggest hug and said, oh, my God, I'm sleeping. And since then, I've just learned more and more about it and seen the things it can do. And it sits with me a lot better as a practitioner, giving something natural to people rather than chemically made pharmaceuticals.
Yeah, and just looking at that, because I know where it's helped a lot of people for all types of different reasons, right? But a lot of questions that come to light, and one of the first ones are like when people are exploring this is where can we get it? Like, is it a specific doctor? Because each state and territory is different. So is it a specific doctor that needs a certain license, or is there certain training that you need to prescribe cannabis, or can any GP just know what the products are and then just write up the script and go, here you go?
So anyone that has a prescriber number, so who is a doctor, they could be a registrar, but a GP, any GP can prescribe medicinal cannabis. Now, is that a good idea? No, because you need to have done a bit of extra training, like anything, to be comfortable knowing what to prescribe, how much to prescribe, yada, yada, yada. So I've sort of, when I first started, there wasn't a lot of training material. So I was doing a lot of stuff from over in the United States where they're a long way ahead of us. So I was doing training programs from them, and have really sort of built my knowledge up from there. So you can go to any GP, but a lot of GPs still aren't comfortable with it because of the stigma around it, and they don't understand it. And because
100%.
It's a grey area, doctors are always very cautious about being sued. And if what we're given as GPs is we follow this thing, the therapeutic guidelines, which says someone comes in with this is what you give them, this is the dose. If that doesn't work, you go that way, and you follow this program that's already written for you. Now, if you go away from that, you need to be able to clinically justify why you've gone away from that. And if something goes wrong, then the patient can say, well, this is not what the normal thing that is prescribed, and then you can get yourself in trouble. So a lot of doctors don't want to do it, but I do a lot of teaching and training for GPs to try and get them comfortable with prescribing cannabis. And that comes down to teaching them about how it works in the body, the different molecules in cannabis. So there's not just THC, there's all these other ones that all do different things, and there's terpenes and all these other things that can affect how it affects the person. And in terms of where to go, so my recommendation is to find a well-trained cannabis prescriber like myself. Unfortunately, there are a few very questionable characters and clinics out there. So usually the ones that will pop up as a sponsored ad, or the ones that were all over Facebook and Instagram and all those things, they are not offering the best service. It might be cheap, but what they're about is pumping out higher quantities of products that they usually own, so they make money on the products that they prescribe. So usually you want to go for a cannabis clinic that is run or owned by a doctor. And that way, like myself, the Heyday clinics are really good. Maybe we could put something in the links to just the ones that, there are some really good ones out there. But unfortunately, the ones that seem to pop up in the feeds are the ones that you really sort of want to avoid.
Oh, that's a shame. And I hope these ones that we're trying to avoid here aren't going to, leave a bad taste in certain individuals' mouths, whether that's politicians or other doctors
Unfortunately,
and patients throughout the...
Unfortunately, they are already. So, which is very, very frustrating for me, because I see the potential of this plant as hopefully one day being first-line medicine, or not even medicine, something that is incorporated into our lifestyle like it used to be, because there are a lot of health benefits you can get from it. But unfortunately, these bigger companies, patients are getting prescribed the wrong thing, they're having side effects, they're telling their friends, I tried cannabis, it was a horrible experience, and then that starts spreading a bad word. And so unfortunately, a lot of the press the cannabis space is getting at the moment is all very negative, which sucks. Also, the other reason behind all the negative press is that as doctors and as the way that cannabis is scheduled, so it's a Schedule 8 medication, the same as opioids, so the same as indones and these, and you can't be seen to be advertising or promoting it. And fair enough, as I don't think there should be a sign saying, have you had your endone today? No, we don't want people doing that. But cannabis, I don't think, should be scheduled the same way. But I can't go publicly and tell all the amazing things really that I've seen this plant do, because I could be labelled as advertising or promoting cannabis. So on that,
because we've got pretty hard up marketing rules in and around that, when it's got
definitely.
to do with
it's just
the info that you're putting out there.
And unfortunately, it's just the way that it's scheduled as a Schedule 8 medication, which is a shame. But I have to throw in a disclaimer now to say that everything I talk about in this podcast is from my own experience. It is not based on evidence. There's not enough evidence out there to that I can make a claim that it helps with this, but I will just talk about what I have seen as a doctor. And by no means am I ever encouraging someone to go out willy-nilly and try street cannabis or whatever. But if you feel inclined, you need to speak to your doctor first to see what they think and then go from there. So I'm not promoting, I'm not advertising, I'm promoting. I just want to have an open discussion about what I've seen and give people probably a bit of understanding of how it works in the body, and any other thing that you'd like me to sort of go over as well.
100%. And I appreciate that you really put that out there. That's important. So when it's got to do with a disclaimer and just pretty much what you put out there. So and there's so many unknowns, like, because you hear people talking about it all the time, but it's just the education and not having the right info out there at all, or just knowing what, is CBD, THC, if it topicals, inhaling it, ingestibles. So can you share, like, some of if it's looking at some of the different types of products, just baseline, and, what's the difference between, THC, CBD? Because then people will question, okay, well, they're looking at this product and it's got THC, CBD in it, and there's percentages of both. So, and really sort of what balances out and what's best for people. And, like everybody and every type of medication, everybody's going to react in a different way.
And it might not work for everybody. I've got patients that I've tried and it doesn't work. I've got other patients that have had horrible side effects from it. So it's not for everyone. But I think probably a good starting point would be to explain the body's natural endocannabinoid system, which is what plant cannabinoids work with and how they work in our body. So if you don't mind, I'll just give a quick little sort of lesson on that. So
let's run through it.
We can understand. So look, we've known that cannabis has worked with humans for a very long time. It's the oldest documented medicine on the planet. So back in the pharaohs, 2000 BC, ancient China, there is documents of the people having cannabis. So we've known that this plant has interacted with our body somehow. Up until sort of 100 years ago, it was the most prescribed medication in the pharmacopoeia. So the Queen's mother used it for menstrual cramps, for the nausea during childbirth. It was a widely used medication, but we never knew how it worked in the body because science wasn't up to the level yet where we could assess molecules in the body and receptors and things like that. Now, unfortunately, what happened when science got to a point where it could analyse these type of things, the whole war on drugs happened over in the States, and cannabis got pushed underground. Now, that's a whole nother chat on what happened there, but it's a bit corrupt.
That'd be a whole 6-hour podcast on its own.
So unfortunately, it got pushed underground, and research just didn't follow on it. But what happened was, pretty much bang on 40 years ago, a couple of scientists over in Israel. Now, Israel is actually one of the leading places for research in cannabis because they've got a lot of PTSD, understandably, from the wars and stuff that go on over there. And I'll talk later about how PTSD cannabis may assist with that. But they've been doing doing a bit of research over there. And a scientist over there discovered 2 new molecules in our body that hadn't been discovered before. And they just so happened to be the same shape as the molecules in the cannabis plant. So they got labelled endocannabinoids. Endo means self, cannabinoids. Now, unfortunately, because they got the bloody cannabinoid label, that didn't help with more research going into it because everyone wanted to avoid it because it was associated with cannabis. But they found
that stigma.
They found these two molecules, and if our body makes a molecule, it must go and do something. So we don't just make a molecule for the sake of, we make hormones, adrenaline goes and speeds up the heart rate. So they went looking for where these molecules go and lock into. And what they found were the CB1 and CB2 receptors. Now, the CB1 receptor, if you Google what is the number one receptor in our brain, it's the CB1 receptor. So not many people know that. The most abundant receptor in the human brain is the cannabinoid 1 receptor. And the most densely populated area is in our limbic system, so our emotions, our behaviours, this system. Also, we've got them all scattered through our digestive tract, the female reproductive system, and pretty much nearly every cell in our body has these receptors. The CB2 receptors are out in our peripheries, our immune system, everywhere in our body. Like our body, when they found the receptor and it just lit up, the body just went, these receptors are everywhere. So that showed them that this is a pretty important system in our body. If every cell in our body has a receptor for these little molecules, the trick then became, what does it do?
Yeah, and that makes sense when people use topicals in different forms, because if you got these different receptors that are absolutely everywhere, so it makes sense to what you're saying now.
Yep. So what they've worked out is that the body's natural endocannabinoid system is the master regulator of keeping our body and all other systems in homeostasis or in balance. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So it controls, inflammation, anxiety, stress, pain response, everything of that can be regulated by the endocannabinoid system. Now, what's happening is, as a species, we are all becoming deficient in our natural endocannabinoids because we don't have the foundation or the building blocks that was in our diets and other ways we lived many, many years ago. So Westernization is really starting to suppress our natural cannabinoid levels. Now, what happens when you are low in cannabinoids?
Really? It's stripping it away?
Yep. And so what happens is when you're low in cannabinoids, systems start going out of balance because they don't have the cannabinoids there to pull them into balance. And the first things that go out of balance are your inflammatory pathways and mental health and a few other things. Now, there's some very good theories out there, and I'm hoping there'll be papers to prove it one day, but people are postulating that the reason we are seeing a rise in things like allergies, autism, migraines, fibromyalgia, all these things is because of low cannabinoids. So when mum is pregnant, her cannabinoid levels are lower when they're previously, and pathways aren't developing properly because the cannabinoids aren't there to balance out the progress and the growth of those pathways. Makes sense to me because I find a lot of people who respond well to cannabinoid medicine seem to have those issues. So that's the body's endocannabinoid system. So it is a very important system, and it baffles me why it's not taught in med school. Absolutely blows my mind. Now that we know that the number one receptor in the brain is a cannabinoid receptor, how can a medical degree not talk about this pathway? I've written to pretty much every medical university in the country and said, I will come and give a lecture for free to your med students about the cannabinoid system. I won't even talk about cannabis. No one gets back to me. It absolutely baffles me.
Is there a particular board or are there roadblocks? Obviously, you don't want to go into too much detail or it's going to implicate anything, but because you're knocking on the doors to these major universities and you're doing it in a intricate, smart way to make sure that people get the right info and not, obviously it's still shadowed in that stigma, but it's just trying to break the mold. So
yeah,
is there like a whole group of people that are, nah, we're not letting James Stewart through the door, not happening?
But I don't know. I don't know. I mean, the thing that I always come up against when I'm lobbying for better access for veterans and trying to change driving laws and things like that is that they just keep saying there's no evidence. There's not enough evidence. Now, the reason there's not these big studies done on it is because who pays for those big studies? Pharmaceutical companies. Now, pharmaceutical companies, when they
100%.
prove that their molecule can work, they've patented that molecule. So what they prove is only going to benefit their product. You can't patent the cannabis plant. It's a naturally occurring plant. So they're not going to invest money in it because whatever they prove, every other company in the cannabis space can go, thank you very much. You've just proven this for us. We're on the bandwagon as well. So, you keep throwing out that there's not enough evidence. So that's really annoying because there's enough evidence out there if you look. There's just not these huge, randomized controlled double-blind studies that are done by the pharmaceutical companies. But there's enough evidence out there. And what I've kind of got on the front foot this year and created something that we'll probably talk about later is the Stewart Cannabis Survey for this year. And what it is just an open survey that anyone who's using cannabis in any way, shape or form can answer and talk about their experience with cannabis and has it helped, has it not helped, what are the issues. And by doing that, for example, when I went down with our war veterans to try and get the policy changed so they can be approved to have funding for cannabis for not just pain but for also mental health conditions, I presented that to the DVA and said, because they straight away said, the doctor there said, well, where's the evidence? And I said, look, there's none of the big studies. And I said, because of the pharmaceutical reason, here's a survey where I've got almost 700 people currently using it. It's only objective data. It's anecdotal evidence. It's not hard evidence, but have a look at the results and see
something
and see what they say. But still, the hoity-toities in these powerful positions are just, don't know. I think they're comfortable with what they know. They never want to everyone's just so scared of being sued or something like that they don't want to go into these grey areas because, if I make the decision to push yes on that and something bad happens, it's very frustrating for someone who sees day in and day out what this plant can do. It is pretty frustrating that this is not more mainstream, but we're getting there, mate. Like, we slow steps. It's just happening a lot slower than we like, but we're getting there. Understandably, systems do need to be in place. You do need to have, we do need to make sure things are safe before they get, open slather. But I just think things could progress a little bit quicker with cannabis, but it's just, it's unfortunate. It's under the stigma. Like, you speak to a lot of people still, as soon as you mention cannabis, they you're a drug smoking hippie, who doesn't work.
Yeah, yep.
Everyone's still got that whole idea about it, which sucks. It's funny, there's the whole campaign that they did over the States. Like, I've got some posters up here of the scare tactics, and there's this one where it says, it's got marijuana. If you take it, it'll lead to weird orgies, wild parties, and passions. And I'm like, that doesn't sound too bad. And the guy's injecting it into this young girl's arm. It's like, you can't inject it. So the scare tactic, I'll tell you what, they nailed it. They did a good job because everyone was shit scared of it for a while.
Propaganda, and especially when it's not making money for big pharma, like you said, how they can hone in and they can patent certain things, but when you got a natural plant and it can be extracted in certain ways and benefit not just millions but billions of people. But how do you cut through, like, you're talking about the study, but is there things that we can rely on that we can draw upon the States, or we need to do our own internal ones in Australia? I reckon there'd be people out there that would fund you, like that, people that are on board this to get it going.
But they are expensive, and the States are starting to do some good research. So I've been speaking closely with a scientist over there, and she's working. The NFL actually granted $2 million to do research on cannabinoids with post-concussion syndrome, and CTE. So patients
CTE,
people that have received lots of head knocks, and CTE, what effect that has on the brain, and can cannabinoids help? Now she's proving that it definitely can help, because cannabinoids can cross the blood-brain barrier. So she's doing some great work. I have approached the AFL to see if they would be interested. I spoke at the National Inquiry into Concussion in Sport last year in Melbourne, and my presentation just got overlooked. They didn't. No one in the Senate or anything gave me time of day, even though I was, I think what I was presenting was far better than having a mouth guard that can tell you how hard your head's been knocked. Well, that's no good. That's just going to tell you how quickly you can probably predict you're going to go crazy from CTE. It's frustrating, but the big studies that they rely on.
Has David Pocock heard about some of the work that you're doing? Senator Pocock down in Canberra?
No, I haven't spoken to Dave yet.
I'm just saying, that's what I was thinking. You got someone that's gone through the fire of flames, especially with rugby there, like smacking the head about, and he was, had his head deep in the scrum, getting knocked about, and that's probably someone that would, maybe take it on board. And being in Canberra, where compared to other states and territories, things are a little bit looser, let's just say.
Do you know
Dave?
Do you know him?
No. I know of him, but I haven't met him.
I've got a lot of ex-rugby, AFL, NRL players on my books, so I actually might. That's a good idea. I might reach out to a couple and say, "Can you get me in contact?" Because that's what I need. We need someone who's got a voice with the powerful people to make it go ahead. But I guess I'm going back to your original question on CBD and THC and what the difference is. So we understand we've got these receptors in our body that do different things, but ultimately they are there to keep the body in balance, okay? With cannabis, and actually with all plant medicine, all natural medicine in general, it's not just one molecule like a pharmaceutical. It's hundreds, if not thousands of molecules that go and do different things. And so we don't know where a lot of them go and what they do. And that's actually how pharmaceutical companies got in the first place years ago, was they came and presented to the medical boards Plants, we don't know where all the molecules do. They're very unpredictable and they're unsafe. We can present a single molecule agent that we know exactly where it goes and what it does. So therefore, it's more predictable, more safe. Now, initially, that makes sense. That's okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But what we now know is that with plants, one molecule that we don't know goes off and does something up there. Another one goes the other way and does something down there, and they balance each other out. You get all this balancing effect from the whole plant, and that's why a lot of the time with natural medicines, you don't get too many side effects because you've got these supporting molecules on board, all these other molecules working together to balance each other out. What pharmaceutical companies do is they find the molecule that does the most, and they get that, strip all the rest away, and ramp that one up. So it's going to do that effect, but there's nothing to counteract it for side effects. And that's why most pharmaceuticals have some pretty horrendous side effects. So
you're not seeing people constantly ODing on the streets from cannabis, that's for sure, compared to fentanyl and everything. Oh, God.
Horrendous. That's another reason why plant medicine and natural medicine has never really been accepted, because it's always like, well, tell me where that molecule goes. I don't bloody know, but it's not going to. We know it's not doing anything harmful, or it's balancing it out. So that makes it still tricky, because as scientists and medically trained people, most doctors like to know exactly what's happening, what receptor it's going to, what it does in the body. And that's often a hard mold to break with doctors who are very, very smart, but very, this is what I need to know exactly what goes on. So that makes it hard in that sense as well. But yeah, in cannabis, you've got obviously the one that most people know about is THC. Now that's the one that makes you stoned, so to speak. Makes you relaxed. It's, can help with the perception of pain. Lots of different things. Good, anti-nausea, because it works in the midbrain, where our nausea receptors are. And then you've got CBD, which is called the other major cannabinoid. Now, CBD is a bit of what we call a bit of a promiscuous molecule. It kind of locks into CB2, a little bit of CB1, goes off and does these other receptors in the skin and all these different areas. And so it's a bit of a all over the place kind of one, but it's non-intoxicating. So it doesn't make you stoned or lazy or anything like that. And then now we're learning more and more about what we call minor cannabinoids. So CBG, CBC, CBN, all these different ones we just learned, and we're finding more and more and more molecules in this plant. And then we're trying to work out, where they go and what their therapeutic benefit might be.
God, we need more studies. If you're finding all these different cannabinoids, like if you're looking at, THC and CBD, but then when you got the whole alphabet there, what is that and what does it mean? And if you enhance certain ones, like it might be a great benefit to certain people with whatever their health, disability, whatever the situation is.
Yeah, and that's why it's important. That's why, like I said before, it's important for true medicinal. If you want to get truly medicinal benefit from cannabis, you need to speak to a doctor who knows what they're talking about with cannabis. So you need to speak to someone like myself, Dr. Jim Connell, Carolyn Bosa. There's lots out there that, we know that these finer intricacies of the medicine, and that way we can really tailor the medicine to suit you. And cannabis, the trick with it is it's not a one size fits all. And everybody responds differently depending on your endocannabinoid system. So something that might work fantastic for one person could not do anything for another person or give them some side effects. So it's all about just working with them and tinkering and changing doses and doing a little bit of tweaking to get it to work for that person. And unfortunately, if you go to one of the bigger online clinics, everyone's sort of tarnished with the same brush. You're going to get bud, you're going to get weed to smoke. I had a 70-year-old lady come to me with arthritis from one of these clinics, and she was prescribed a very strong bud to smoke. She's never smoked in her life. I'm like, that is totally the wrong thing to be prescribed. That was what they pumped out.
And that's what I wanted to ask too. Like, what are the variations that we can legally prescribe in Australia when it's got to do with the oils, like when it's got to do with, smoking it, vaping it, whatever the situations are. So, like, it's just good to have that knowledge so other people know what is available. But people are going to react differently. Not everybody can, like you said, you got this old lady never touched it. and she's inhaling it,
Yeah.
where
And she never
just
smoked
say,
it, yeah.
I don't know, maybe an oil could have been
Exactly.
better for her.
Yeah, she
So
should have had it. She should have had a CBD oil. But the way we can prescribe it. So obviously the main one that everyone knows is buds, or in medical terms, it's called flower. Now, the why you would use flower is because it's quick acting, so quick onset. So when you inhale something, it works straight away. So that could be used for someone who's having panic attacks, back spasms, things that come on pretty quick. Have your inhalation, that'll hopefully hit it pretty quickly. So, but flowers is the main one and still the most popular, because that's the way most people have engaged with cannabis throughout that, previously, and the one they know. The other way, other inhalation form is what are called vape carts, or little carts. Now, what these are oil cartridges, nothing to do like the nicotine vapes. Little oil cartridges, and where the oil come from is essentially on the cannabis plant. You've got trichomes, which are the little globules that sit on the leaf of the plant, and they contain all the active molecules. They contain all the cannabinoids and terpenes and everything. So, in very basic terms, what they do is shake the plant. The trichomes fall off, they push them into an oil, that goes into a cart, and that's what you inhale.
Right.
So that's the little carts. That's very basic terms, but that's kind of to understand what they are. And again, you would use that for acute, reasons or something like that. So when I used to battle really bad anxiety and I was on antidepressants. When I was coming off my antidepressants, I was still prone to panic attacks and anxiety. So I would have the little vape in my pocket. And just by having it in there, that calmed my anxiety down, because I knew if I started to escalate, I could grab it, have a quick little toke, and it would calm me down. So that's generally when we go for an inhalation. The other ways you can have it is an oil that you pop under your tongue, so something like this, okay, and then you would just pop it under your tongue, okay? And so that can be, all of these what I'm speaking about can be either CBD, THC, a combination of both, some minor cannabinoids, that kind of thing. So you can have the oils that go under your tongue. Now, what you would use an oil for is a longer acting effect. So if you're using a THC oil, it's a slower onset but lasts a lot longer. CBD is kind of a longer acting molecule and something you want to be consistently. So most of the time when we're prescribing CBD, we'll go for an oil like that. The other ways now, this year's been an explosion of what we call gummies or pastilles. Same kind of mechanism of action. When you ingest it, it goes through the digestive tract and then is processed in the liver. So again, slower onset, but a bit of a prolonged release. And interestingly, THC, when you inhale it or you burn it, it's converted to delta-9 THC. When you ingest it, it goes to 11-hydroxy-THC. So a slightly different molecule that can have a slightly different feel. So you'll find some people can't do edibles. It doesn't agree with them, or it doesn't work, but they can inhale. You've got other people who can't inhale, but they can do edibles. So they're the main things, the flower, the carts, oils, and the pastilles. There's also wafers that work in a similar way. There's also topical for creams, because we have cannabinoid receptors in the skin, suppositories, pessaries, pretty much most orifices or anything, you can get it in there somehow and to see if it works.
Covers it all. And is there a reason, like when it's looking at the mechanics of, just say, like if you got an oil and it's, well, I'm just throwing it out there, but say if it's 8% THC and then you've got X amount of CBD, it's just like people are asking questions in and around that. Like, what is there a reason why that percentage is there of the THC? Is that to make sure that, because people are worried about the whole psychoactive and this and that and everything, and but then from what I've heard, it's it's having that component in there because of the cannabinoids, because how it reacts to the body to help whatever that pain or whatever that situation may be. Does that make sense?
You'll find, so we'll talk about a CBD oil, predominant oil. Now, evidence shows that what's called a full spectrum oil is more effective. Now, what they mean by full spectrum is that all the molecules, so when they get the juice out of the plant, so to speak, if you leave, and this is the same for all plant medicine, if you leave all the molecules intact, they work better together. So you get this synergistic effect, or in the cannabis space, it's called the entourage effect. So they work better together. So that's why you'll see a lot of CBD oils prescribed, like say 100 milligrams of CBD, but they will have 4 milligrams of THC in it. That's because you want to leave that THC molecule in there to get the much better effect of the plant. If you take the THC right out, you're left with what's called a broad spectrum. So everything else is still in there, but the THC is being taken out. And yep, they can work. You just may need a little bit more. And then you can go to a CBD isolate, which is just the CBD molecule is left in and everything else is removed. And they can be beneficial as well, but you might need a little bit more to get it. Now, the trick obviously is that if we know a full spectrum works better, what do you do about driving laws? Because there's a bit of THC in it. So
yeah, there's a bit of that going on. There needs to be some regulation put in place to protect people, especially if they've got, here's my script, they're pulling it out. And it's like, and that's what annoys the shit out of me, right? Excuse the French. But when you're looking at that THC, but are there any tests where this person's just been doped up on all sorts of Valium and endones and who knows what other kind of opioids, and they're half asleep at the wheel?
Yep.
Like,
someone could
that does not make sense to me.
Someone could have 2 opioids, a Valium, 2 beers, and be absolutely off their rocker, and someone can have a little bit of THC and then they've treated worse. Now the thing with having a small amount of THC in a CBD oil, in no way, shape or form is it going to intoxicate you. No way. If you have the ratio of probably 4-to-1 or 5-to-1 CBD to THC, so if you have 5 CBD to 1 THC molecule, or if you dial that up, if you have a CBD 20, THC 4 or something like that, CBD counteracts the sedating, stoning effects of THC. Because it modulates the receptor that THC locks into. So a C100 with cannabinoids less than, with THC less than 5, you're not going to feel it. You could even have THC up to probably about 10, 15, and you're not going to feel the THC. As in a stoning psychotropic effect, you may receive some benefits in other way, but you're not going to feel intoxicated in any way, shape or form. And that's how I treat my patients in the nursing home who may benefit from a bit of THC, but I just don't want them stoned in their bed all day. So I load them up with CBD as well. And then when they have that THC, that they're not so intoxicated. And also CBD is fantastic. Everyone should be. I can't say that actually. CBD is a great molecule for just balancing the body.
Yeah, and if you're looking at balancing the body, that just made me think about just talking about nursing homes. And if you've got people with dementia, and some individuals can be, if you're talking about dementia and you're talking about some of the extreme behaviours that can come across that, do you ever have like geriatricians like reaching out and saying, hey, we might want to tap in to Dr. Stewart here, where, this can sort of balance an individual out and not just slamming with copious amounts of Valium and this and that and having them dribbling in a corner.
We getting there, hopefully. So I do 1 day a week, I do nursing home rounds, and I'm starting to prescribe, speak to the next of kin, whoever's the demented patient, and say, would you be interested in trying some cannabis for this person? Because unfortunately what happens in dementia wards is these people do have behavioural issues, especially around what's called sundowning. So as the sun goes down, they kick off. Now, interestingly, the reason behind that is that back from caveman days, at sundown is when the major animals, the big animals, would hunt. And so we were prey at dusk. And so we were very alert at dusk. And so that has carried through to behavioural issues happening at sundown. So that can also be why some people may feel their anxiety is worse around 4, 5, 6, 7 o'clock, because it's this built-in thing that's carried over from many, many years ago.
Yeah, it's like innate within our system.
Yep. What will happen though in a dementia ward, if someone's really kicking off, out comes the needle, bang, some risperidone, which is an antipsychotic, sedative, and then, like you said, this person's just bombed out, dribbling in the corner. Now that's, that's not really the best for that person because they're just scared. They don't know what's going on.
That's
And so
right.
I would love to, I wish at the nursing home I was at, I could get all the people, the carers of the people that are in the dementia ward and say, hey, can we do a trial? Let me see about giving everyone a little bit of THC or something at 3 or 4 o'clock on the arvo. I'll put some Johnny Cash on or something on the radio and let's just see what happens. Like, I think it could be amazing, but I don't think I can get there yet, but I am starting to prescribe it, and it does seem to be okay. But then, unfortunately, a few times it's made their dementia worse with THC, so they start hallucinating, and so that's where you've got to be careful. So that's where it comes back to tweaking. Okay, well maybe I need to elevate more CBD to dial down the psychotropic effect of the THC. That kind of thing. But I think it's got its place definitely in aged care because the current aged care system is especially dementia. Dementia is a pretty horrible disease, but the care and just seeing these people in the last years of their life, where the way they are, it's not that nice to see. So I think a little bit of cannabis might cheer them up, but. Anyway, see if we can
get. Yeah. I reckon. I think, that's a massive study within itself. And you're looking at Australia's aging population. And, I hope something would be able to really channel through. So,
one day, if I get enough money, I'll open up my own nursing home, but I reckon it'll be booked out pretty quick.
Yeah, but that's good. It's just talking to the individuals that, whether they're autonomous and can say what they need or want, or you're seeing families that are desperate and, where they want to reach out. And it's just knowing that this is out there and this is available. And I know there's a lot of fear of the unknown, but it's just getting these studies in and hopefully a lot of individuals can grant it. Because I know there's a lot of, because I've been in the mix of like working in a sector of, my wife and I run a disability service provision company and seeing different trials and studies, and where it's not always big corporates, it's certain individuals that may have dollars and cents where they can put it towards that. And then you're seeing the benefits of some of these studies. And like, if I was going to throw one out there, you're looking at Neuralink. So because you've got all these struggling studies where it's people trying to get individuals to walk again, like when it's got to do with spinal cord injuries, but they're relying on government grants. And then you got Mr. Musk that's just come over and said, hold my beer, let's just throw X amount of dollars at Neuralink. And now he's just fast tracking a lot of stuff. And hopefully there's other studies. And I talked to Dr. Petrino, that's from Australia, and he's now over in America. And he's fortunate that he's working for a large organization over there that are attributing money to the same cause. But you can't keep up with $1 billion force of someone like Musk that's throwing money at this, like where it's going to really get a lot of individuals over the line, I think, in time, but we'll see. But hopefully, hopefully this sector does tap into it when it's got to do with the work that you're doing that can benefit a lot of individuals out there. But what do you think about the current accessibility to the people that are on it or want to explore this to help them when it's got to do with cost?
Yeah, so originally when it first started, it was expensive. No doubt about it. It was very expensive. Now the costs are pretty good. A lot of companies will do benefits, will do discount or special products for people that are on healthcare cards, disability support pension, things like that. And the problem with it is it's the cost up front that's the issue. So say a bottle of CBD is anywhere, C100 is anywhere from $100 up to $200. Now, yes, that's a lot of money. But if you're prescribed the right product and you're only needing a small amount, that bottle will last you anywhere from 1 to 3 months. Okay, so
long time.
Yeah. So I've done a bit of a calculation for my patients, and on average, if you for medicinal cannabis, it's anywhere from 50 cents to $4.50 a day to be on it. Okay, so a coffee. But the trick is, again,
that's a good comparison.
Yeah, but again, you've got to have a doctor who is not locked into any companies, who can prescribe whatever product they want to prescribe and get the patients the best deal on the best product that's available. Unfortunately,
And what do you mean by not locked into any companies? Do you mean locked into a specific company that's selling the CBD or THC? Like,
yeah. So you'll have
yep.
a lot of those, the big companies that we see online, the ones that hold the biggest market share, they have their own products. They have their own clinics. So the doctors who are prescribing in their clinic will generally lean towards that company's products, even if it's not in the patient's best interest or even if it's not the most cost-effective product. Unfortunately, that's how it is. And it sucks.
That's a shame.
And that's why I say to people, you might be able to get a consult for $50 with these people, and we're on 250. But at the end of the day, I guarantee you, I'll be saving you money because I'll be able to prescribe you a product that's probably better than you're going to get from them, that's going to last you longer, that's going to work out cheaper in the long run. But it's just that initial cost up front is a shame. But there are, and the governing bodies are now cracking down on it, which is awesome. The TGA, APRA, they've realised that, holy shit, this is out of control. And I don't think no one expected it to explode as quick as it did, and no one expected these very savvy businessmen to find the loopholes that they found, which allowed them to get away with this for so long. And I think it was just like, how'd they find that? And it wasn't written into the rules or whatever. And now the regulatory bodies, hats off to them, I just go, okay, we need to do something. And they're actually really cracking down on it. But some people have made some serious coin off taking advantage of unwell people, which sucks. And I know karma's going to get them, so I don't get too worked up about it anymore.
Do you know that stuff does my head in, Dr. Stewart? Because it's the same like going back to, my wife and I, we run and own an NDIS service provision business looking after people with disability, and not just under NDIS, it's other schemes that we're involved in as well. But what's good with the NDIS, that it's really cracked down on a lot of the unsavory characters out there that are really, and big time. And it doesn't matter that it's not just all the unregistered providers; it's registered providers as well.
Yeah.
So,
and that's exactly the same thing. Is that the NDIS is a fantastic initiative, and when it was done, I'm like, this is unbelievable. But again, you get these bloody businessmen getting into healthcare, and they just work out loopholes and how they can make money. And they don't care. They don't put patients first. They only put their pockets first. And as a result, the NDIS has turned into a shit show because there's just so many corrupt buggers in it. And it's mate, I feel you. It's so frustrating because they ruin it for the good guys. That's the thing. They ruin it for the good guys and they ruin it for the patient. Yeah, it's
always a way. It doesn't matter what sector.
Greedy business, mate. But karma will get them. They're going to die unhappy. I mean, the business karma will get them.
Karma will get them. So how's it go with the product? Like when you're looking at the product within Australia, and when you're looking at, I don't know if you've put boots on the ground much across the nation, and every state and territory is probably going to be different with some of the licenses that they give to farmers.
Yeah.
And how are we looking at? Is there a healthy system at the moment with growth and crops?
Yep. The Australian market, Australian grown stuff's really good, and I always try and support the Aussie grown stuff. The problem that has been, and it still is, and it's another very frustrating thing, is that it's much easier to get an importing license, and it's much cheaper to import stuff from overseas than it is to get a manufacturing license and grow it in Australia. And also, the cost of labour and everything from overseas is a lot cheaper. And also the regulations around what can be imported has been, I think it's being changed now, but they were a lot more lenient on what could come in, but very strict on the quality of what was grown in Australia. And that made it and that's why a lot of Australian companies, when they started up in Australia, people threw a lot of money at them and bought shares and things like that. And that's why they're all struggling, because the imports just overtook everything. So again, that's been changed, and I hope they bring in a tax.
I was going to say, is there change?
Yeah, it's coming, and they're really starting to support the Aussie market more. The benefit when you get something grown in Australia is it's a lot fresher, so it doesn't spend some of these products. They're they're not selling over in Canada, so someone will put it up for sale to get to Australia. So it's been over there for already 3 months, hasn't taken off. Then we get it, okay. Then it spends a month, 2 months coming in a shipping container across the ocean in the sun. By the time we get it, it's just not fresh. It's had to have been radiated over there, a truckload to reduce the pathogens. So the Aussie stuff and the Kiwi stuff is a lot fresher and just more wholesome grown. There's some fantastic farms in Australia, Tassie Botanics, ECS, Superbly Green, these guys, that they grow.
Is there a big one up in Armadale?
Yeah, they're everywhere. Yeah, you'd be surprised that they're everywhere. And what a lot of these companies do is they, sunlit domes, live organic soil, all this kind of stuff, and really grow really, really nice flowers. So the Aussies are we're getting there. But then we've got to compete with these international ones coming in that come in cheaper and blah, 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 blah. So another frustrating thing.
And that's the thing. Yeah, and that's the thing I worry about too, because you look at like the States compared to everywhere, right?
Yeah.
So where you're looking at GMOs and you don't know what they're spraying in it and all that sort of stuff, and how that's taking effect on the plant too, like if it's certain herbicides and whatever it may be. And if you got the FDA compared to the TGA, like, are they talking to each other? Do they really know what's going on over in other countries? Like, and that's because... Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
And the problem with following the United States is I don't think cannabis is being done very well over there, because it's a very, very recreational, high THC market. Okay, so they're really driving for more THC, let's get as sparked up as we can. And that's not how you use this plant as a medicine. That's not what it's there for. We know that, once THC gets up high, that's where you can start getting some negative effects. You can start having some mental health issues when the THC is too high. But over there, the market is so heavily driven by just give me the strongest stuff you've got to blow my head off. And unfortunately we are following that market. Like now there's some very strong flowers out there that just, it's not medicine. It's just bombing yourself. Like it's not good. And so unfortunately the Australian market is following that a bit. But, again, I hope regulations come in that say we can have nothing stronger. Like I'm a big fan for it to go legal. Like I think if you educate people how to use this.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. When you're looking at California, other certain states, Thailand, I think all that certain stuff.
It should go legal, but it needs to be a regulated legal market that we don't have these super strong mutant genes sold. We have
That's what I worry about.
We have well-grown, low THC, high CBD. All the weed back in the sort of 60s and 70s that was grown then was probably equal parts THC to CBD, probably sitting around 7-8% of each. So you get a nice, balanced, happy feeling. What's happening now is that they're just 35, 36% THC with no CBD, nothing else in them. So it's just, again, similar to...
nothing to balance.
Nothing to balance. So it's similar to a pharmaceutical. You just get this whack of THC and then it's not enjoyable. If you know how to use cannabis properly, that is not what it's there for. That's not what this plant is here for. And they just keep genetically mutating it to keep ramping up the THC. So I don't think we should be following. Everyone goes, California's the ones that follow, but I think it is. I think, we need to go back to older ways and reduce it all down, and that'd be safer. And that's what I think. If it goes legal, it needs to be very, very regulated, because it can turn into a shit show. And I'd be worried that, it just is the wrong thing. So I went over to Colorado last year for a psychedelic conference.
Because they got a lot of stuff legal there, or no?
Yeah.
Colorado, like mushrooms, all that stuff.
Yep, everything's legal in Colorado. So I was first time to the States. I was very excited to get to a dispensary. So I got there, and then they said, you need your bloody passport. So back to the hotel, passport, back to the dispensary. And I went in and I said, is
this in Colorado?
It's in Colorado, yeah. And it's just just like a toy shop. And I'm like, oh, sweet. I said, mate, have you
God.
got any ones with a bit of higher CBD concentration? I'm like, nah, man, no one smokes that. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, have you got anything sort of around the 15, 16% THC? No, man, no one smokes that low. I'm like, well, all right. Have you got a pure CBD flower that I can mix with one? Because that's what you can do. You can put a CBD flower and mix it with a strong. Man, no one uses straight CBD. I'm like, all right, you got it. He's like, well, we got some 80% shatter over here that's going to blast you. And I'm like, mate, I don't want that to happen. I want to just kill.
Yeah.
And that's what it was. It was all just so. I'm just like, and having a look around at the people in there that reflected it. They weren't your active members of society. They were the typical stoner.
Yeah, the stereotype.
Yeah, and that's what happens when you ramp it. Like it's yeah. So if it goes legal, it's got to be the lower stuff. And what we know with cannabis is the lower dose is the most effective dose. The lowest dose where it works is the most effective, because most cannabis molecules have this what we call a biphasic effect. So you work your way up to find your dose. The dose where it starts to work is where you stay. If you add more, it doesn't give you more benefit. If you add more, you can make things worse again. Okay, so that's the trick about finding things. And that's why a lot of people, when they have tried cannabis...
Yeah, it's a science, like any medication.
Yeah. So when a lot of people, when they tried cannabis for the first time, may have had a bad experience, or later on as they started using it, they started having bad experiences as the cannabis got made stronger. So originally it was quite low when you were staying at that level where it worked, but then the cannabis got stronger and stronger and stronger. So all of a sudden it's tipping you over into negative effects. And it went from being relaxing and calm to some paranoia, some anxiety, the room spinning around, that kind of thing. So that happens when people try cannabis for the first time. They've gone from having zero THC in their body to someone handing you a bong when they're 16 or a joint, say, rip into this, and you have a go, and then next thing you roll it around and throw it up and carry it on. That's because you've just got too much THC.
They're like, nah, not again.
Yeah. So that's just too much. So, again, that's why it's good to come to a doctor who knows what they're talking about to avoid that negative from happening.
So how did it go in general, like being over there and what you're exposed to in Colorado? Like, did you get a lot of... Is there more sort of frontiership on what they're... Because you're going back to like some of these cannabinoids and what they're finding. So is there still more of that, what they're doing in-house in the States or Colorado? And how is it? Because it seems like over there, every state, they're all states, but it's like they're their own little countries in a way.
Yeah, they kind of are. It's really weird. But one state can have their own rules, and next door is the total opposite, the state next to it. But no, there wasn't, in the dispensaries and speaking to the bud tenders and that, there wasn't a lot of knowledge or emphasis on the other minor cannabinoids or even terpenes, which are the sort of aromatics of the plant, which definitely have an effect on how the plant affects you. So sort of like aromatherapy, kind of like if you smell something high in linalool, which is in lavender, that'll make you sleepy.
Okay.
So if you have a cannabis flower or a product that has high linalool terpenes, it's going to be more of a sedative effect. A lot of the sort of bud tenders I spoke to sort of weren't really up to speed. But I didn't want to be a wanker and sort of show how much I knew. So I just, okay, you don't really know, it's all good. But again, it was just really sort of high strength kind of stuff that wasn't the way to go.
Right. So when you're looking at, and this is going to lead into obviously off the back of your survey, and when you're talking about PTSD, insomnia, but when you're anxiety, but say you're looking at, are there, can you talk about if it's specific conditions at all that we could lean into where it can help?
Yeah. So the main things that people come and see me for would be anxiety, pain, and sleep. And all of those are going to respond to different molecules in the cannabis plant. So anxiety will generally respond better to long-term CBD use to dial down, balance the body out, bring down that fight and flight pathway that's dialed up. People with anxiety, we sit in a state of threat, so we get extra cortisol, extra adrenaline into our system, which keeps us dialed up and keeps us overactive. CBD can work to dial that down, and interestingly, CBG, one of the minor cannabinoids we know, works with the adrenaline pathway to calm that down as well. So a CBG product might be able to help with a bit of anxiety. And then the other one is pain. So depending on what type of pain may depend on what molecule it responds to. So if it's inflammatory pain, then I would lean towards a CBD predominant product because CBD is a fantastic anti-inflammatory. If it is neurological pain or nerve pain, maybe they might benefit from a little bit of extra THC in there.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to know. I wasn't too sure about all that stuff when it's got to do with the neurological side of things.
Yep. So THC works in very basic terms kind of similar to opioids in that the way opioids work is they change how your brain perceives the pain response. So something hurts, sends a signal to your brain to say, my toe's hurting. Opioids modulate that so the signal doesn't get through, so your brain doesn't know that your toe's hurting. THC kind of in similar ways modulates the frequency of the pain. So the pain might still be getting there, but it's nowhere near as bad. The volume's turned down a little bit, or you're like, I can feel that, but it's not bothering me as much as it normally does. That's kind of how THC could help with that kind of pain. And then the other one was sleep. So sleep would be, yes, where I would lean towards maybe a THC predominant product. But interestingly, a lot of the time we can't sleep because of an overactive mind or because we are in pain from inflammation from the activities we've done through the day. So often people, if they take a CBD product through the day, which is when you take CBD, can find their sleep improves because, one, it might dial their mind down at nighttime, and secondly, it reduces their inflammation. So they go to bed and their mind is slower and their inflammation is dialed down, so they're more comfortable. So, it's all a little bit of trial error. And like I've said before, this is just based on what I have seen. There is no evidence to say that this actually works. And it's not for everyone, and there are side effects. And don't go out and buy some on the street just because of what I say. You need to speak to a health practitioner who knows what they're talking about before you try these things.
That's right, people. You heard it. So, and that's the other thing where I've seen other individuals that I know, and whether it's individuals that I know or speaking online or whatever it may be, and where if it is spinal cord injuries or the like, where the neural pathways are being disrupted and they get a lot of spasticity, and some people have to get that baclofen pumps inserted. It's pretty extensive surgery. So, but then I've seen other people sort of risk mitigate, and where they take said oils and seeing the right practitioner and make sure they get something that works for them. So then, they can function throughout the day.
Yeah.
So, their spasticity is not getting in the way of them being able to get up and wheel around.
Yeah. Often it's a combination. So often I've got a lot of patients who are still on a combination of their pharmaceuticals, but I've introduced cannabinoids, and that may have improved their quality of life a bit better, or it's been, as you'll see the results from the survey I did, it's enabled them to reduce some of their pharmaceuticals that were giving them unwanted side effects. So it's reduced the side, because they've been able to reduce that, it can reduce some of the side effects that they've been getting. So there's a place for Western medicine, there's definitely a place for pharmaceuticals, but the frustrating thing is that don't just write cannabis off. That pathway I was talking about, I've been pushing to put a fork in there and say, okay, this is the traditional way for your antidepressant or whatever. Put the option and say, have you considered that one? That way. You don't have to. If you don't want to, you don't have to go that way. But don't leave it out. Put it as an option.
Yeah. And do you think that, so have you seen, and this is obviously just based a lot on your own experience and situations like this, but have you been across a situation when you can see where the effects of the THC, it's starting to look at balancing, but then it's reducing the effects or fully being able to eliminate other medications where, people aren't, because there's so many other side effects if you're looking at opioids and all this sort of mess. So where it's like reducing that, getting that out of the system. But also what's important to keep in mind is making sure that, if it's talking to dietitians and other individuals, so you're trying to promote a healthy lifestyle as well, which is super important.
Yeah, exactly.
Looking after the gut biome,
mate, massive. Now you're talking about
yeah, I'm big on that. Because it's hard, because I get really health conscious on stuff because there's where, there's only certain things that I can control physically. So I'm big on what goes in and what comes out and all that sort of stuff. And like, I'm lucky to sort of be in the position that I am and being able to wheel around and like physically, there's not a lot I can do physically, but I still got to move. It doesn't matter your physical capacity. You got to move it or lose it. So,
Mm.
I try and do as much as I can. And when it's big on, when it's got to do with what's in your fridge and having a good look at that and sort of the aisles that you go down
Yeah.
when you're in the supermarket, what trying to avoid, because you're wheeling past something in the corner of your eye, it just triggers and you got the dopamine kicking in, but you got to learn to, mentally sort of suppress that.
Yeah, no, definitely, and that's another sort of part that I push as well is diet and for cannabis or for anything, but for it to work the best, you have to put your body in the best state it can be. So again, that's why it's lifestyle. It's not medicine. Your diet is not. It shouldn't be. Things shouldn't be called a diet. It should be just called the way you eat. People will do a diet and they put the weight back on. It's like, well, that's not going to work. You need to eat the way that you can sustain it, and the way that becomes the way that you eat and what you eat. And the same with exercise and that kind of thing. That's why it's called, like this sort of field is lifestyle medicine, because they're not just giving you something to mask something. We're teaching you how to change your life to live more fuller and better and healthier and longer. But what you're saying about the medicines being able to reduce, and a really good example is, and it doesn't even involve cannabis, is that when someone is at their end of life and you decide, okay, we no longer need any of these medications to prolong life, we will cease medications. The amount of times that you stop all the medications that someone's on and they perk up. They still end up dying, but there's a period there where they they'll sit up and start talking, and then they just stop. It's like some of these medications.
Yeah, I've heard of these actually. Yeah.
It happens, mate. It happens. And some of these medications, especially the mental health ones, these antipsychotics and painkiller, Lyrica and things like that. Like, people don't realise they've been on for so long, but they're under this cloud. They're in this cloud because their neurotransmitters are being modulated by these medications, and it's not until
side effects city.
It's not until you take it off, and they just like, oh shit, it's like, oh no, here you are. It's like, damn it, we should have done that ages ago. But yeah, it's a good example, but it does happen. I've seen it many times.
And what's some of the general side effects that people need to, it's just being wary of? Because, and especially can get sketchy if, there's, like you said, there's other players in the game that are prescribing X, Y, and Z, and it might be an easier loophole for people just to maybe get what they don't really need, or they're not getting the education on really how to balance what they need. And then it might put them in a certain state that they don't want to be in. And that, and there's thousands of millions of people that are, having to go at this I shouldn't say all day, every day, but I just mean the amount of people, right? And I only know one person and I think there was a lot of, say, mental health, and it had to do with what ran through their family, or you're looking at certain precursors, and where this young person had to go into, a clinic and get sorted out. But that's just one person. Or, there's plenty of people I know that are prescribing it, getting it prescribed appropriately, and they're fine. So, but it's just to be wary of. It's like with anything, like,
so you need to be wary of where people get into trouble, and where the mental health issues can arise is if you're consuming high levels of THC all the time while your brain is still developing. Okay, so that's from the ages of 16. The brain is still developing to roughly about the age of 24, 25. Okay, so you'll find often the guys that end up with mental health issues from cannabis, they have been using it since they were 16, 17, and what you call sort of your habitual bong smokers who just sit around and rip cones all day and don't do much. Now, why that happens is because when you take an external molecule at high levels and high doses, your natural system will downregulate. Okay, so the same as when you take the medication prednisone, which is a steroid. If you take prednisone for a long time, it downregulates your natural steroid production, which is essential for cortisol and other things. So after a while, if you've been on prednisone for a while, you have to slowly titrate off so your body's natural system kicks back into play. If you're consuming high levels of THC for a long period of time, when your brain is still developing and these pathways need to be balanced, your body's actually turning down the natural cannabinoid systems that it produces. So you're no longer getting activation right across. You're only getting predominantly CB1 activation from THC. You're not getting the CB2 peripheral. You're not getting the rest of the effect that the natural cannabinoid system does on balancing these pathways and letting them generate and develop properly. So the pathways, the neural pathways of these people who are flooding their brains with THC don't develop properly, and yes, they end up with some bad mental. I know I've got a couple of mates, unfortunately, who went that way, but they were the guys that sat around and punched cones all day. So that's a big one. So I really try, and anyone under the age of 25, I'm very cautious, if at all, prescribing them any THC. I more go towards the CBD products, and it's at a lower dose. If you're medically prescribed properly, you're never going to get an amount that's going to downregulate your natural system, so you don't have anything to worry about there. The other things to worry...
If it's under 25, would it be, if you're looking at youngsters that have got severe seizure activity, and if it's like looking at along the line of helping out in that way?
Yeah, so luckily seizure, epilepsy responds to CBD. So interestingly, this is how cannabinoids help with epilepsy. So this is cool. Okay, so epilepsy, you've got, let's say this is the part of the brain that starts firing uncontrollably. Okay, so that's the nerve. So that's firing uncontrollably. For some reason, epilepsy, what it is there's a part of the brain that all of a sudden just starts firing, and all the nerves start firing off around it. So this fires off. It sends a signal down the nerve, and then with nerves, you've got the other nerve sitting here, and you've got this little canal kind of thing, a synapse. So the signal comes down here. This spits out the transmitters, and that fires that nerve to start firing, and it keeps passing along like that. Okay. What cannabinoids do is this nerve here realizes, hey, I'm getting fired off a lot here. This is out of balance. It releases cannabinoids back into the synaptic cleft to come back to this nerve and says, calm down. You don't bloody need to keep firing at me. And that's how it works. It's unbelievable. It's amazing. And that's why CBD can help great with helping with epilepsy. So, with younger people, luckily the things that they're going to, the issues like autism, ADD, things like that, that's all going to respond to the CBD, CBG if it's going to work and it's going to help them. Now, again, not saying it always helps, and there are side effects and that kind of thing, but, luckily most of the stuff for younger people, you're not going to need much THC at it. Sometimes you may, but again, you're not going to get them into that level, this equivalent to your habitual bong smoker ripping cones all day kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's going to be a controlled amount. So
yeah, they can physically and cognitive function, they're fine.
Yeah.
So
So that's the main risk, is that if you're under 25, you need to really be careful of how much THC you're consuming, because it can have some detrimental effects. After the brain's developed, then you only get side effects when you get too much on board. That's a simple rule. Too much of any cannabis molecule will generally do the opposite of what you want it to do. So if someone is currently prescribed cannabis for anxiety and it's making them anxious, then they're taking too much. So if someone's using THC to try and help them sleep and it's keeping them awake, you got too much on board. So it's the opposite thinking to pharmaceuticals. If it's not working, I need more. If it's not working, go the other way, go backwards, reduce the dose. So that's a simple, good mantra that I always tell my patients is too much will do the opposite. So you've always got to, with cannabis, you start low and you very slowly build your way up into your dose where it starts to work, and the lowest dose where it starts to work, that's where you stay, and it'll just continue to give you benefit state. You don't need to go. You don't need to. If 2 drops is good, 4 drops doesn't mean it's going to be twice as good, kind of thing. So
despite what it says on the bottle or whatever it may be, it's just getting what suits the individual.
So that's the main thing. And then, obviously, as the survey sort of said, sometimes you can get appetite stimulation, which can be good for people that are got cancer or eating disorders, but some people don't want appetite stimulation. Dry eyes, sore throat, obviously inhaling, you may have some added lung issues. And it might some people just don't respond very well to it. Some people, I could have them on the smallest dose of set and they just like, nah, that made me feel horrendous. And it's just, okay, their body, it doesn't work.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because I know individuals, they can't even have like a cup of coffee because it's like they're on amphetamines all day. They're just like, this is just how their body reacts to caffeine. So, they could have decaf or not touch it at all. It's just the way it is. But it's absolutely wild just how, natural products, and like I'm big on that too. Like, because I'm looking at when it's got to do with my disability is, I'm a C5, C6 incomplete quadriplegic and have to take certain medication to balance the system. But I'm always worried about, what's filtering through liver, kidneys, all that sort of stuff. I'm pretty conscious with all that.
Yeah, so cannabis is mainly processed through the liver. Okay, so your cytochrome P450, which is the enzyme responsible for a lot of metabolization of a lot of pharmaceuticals. Alcohol is a big one that's metabolized through that thing. So if someone is drinking a shitload, then you got to be careful with how much CBD you give them or something, because you don't want to start overdoing that enzyme. You can start getting some liver damage. So that's the other thing you've got to be careful. And then there's certain medications that you can't have with it. So warfarin, which is a blood thinning molecule, that's one that we kind of avoid. A couple others if you've had transplants.
Warfarin, Calaxane, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, most of the other the anticoagulants are okay. It's just warfarin seems to be the one. But generally, it's pretty well tolerated with most things.
Yeah, it's insane. Just when I'm looking at cannabis, but just when it's got to do with natural products and what they can do for you, or if it's eaten the right way, and just I got put on. I take probiotics every day religiously, and I got put on a study between all the major spinal units and all the universities in Sydney, where all these quadriplegics would take a controlled study on probiotics, and I found out I wasn't on the placebo, and this is back in 2012. Since then, I have not had like the common flu, and this is working in offices, sleeping next to my wife. She's sniffling all over the shop with that, and it hasn't passed through me. And I'm, where when they're looking at quads, someone where their immune system's supposed to be suppressed. Like the only time I got anything close to the common flu was COVID, and I had that twice. And I didn't even get it that bad. So, I try and look after myself. And where I've got a mate of mine, and where he helps like produce when we do podcasts in person. So he produces that, but he's got MS. So I watched it in real time, where I saw him lose his license because he got foot drop and all this other stuff going on, getting certain lesions on the brain and getting the scans back, and where he approached a doctor that put him on an OMS diet, pretty much pescatarian diet. And then in real time, the lesions were disappearing. Foot drop was gone, got his license back. And it's just all these little things. And I was blown away.
Yeah, diet is diet, and putting the right things, and you keep feeding your gut biome. The more you want as many little gut bugs in your gut as you want. You want a diverse flora system in the gut. You want probiotics, all these type of things, because people don't realise that a lot of the neurotransmitters, especially with our brain and mental health, a lot of the neurotransmitters that our brain feeds on are actually released from the gut, not the brain. Like serotonin, the highest release of serotonin comes from the gut, not from your brain. So that's, why dark chocolate and things like that can release serotonin and give you that nice feeling, because it releases that from the gut. So massive on gut health. But again, going back to one of the very first things I said, I learned none of that in med school. But it's not even spoken. The gut biome was not mentioned.
Nothing on Gut Biome
No.
whatsoever.
No.
That is
But
insane to me.
this was a while ago, mate. So this was a while ago.
Still, though, it's not too long ago.
I know. And, they only had a couple of topics on diet. It's just like, what? This should be the whole first couple of years of your med degree should be on diet, exercise, hydration, mindfulness, all this stuff. But, hopefully we can change it.
We will. Talk about changing driving laws. Is any of the, grey areas getting explored? So, so the rules are getting bent in a positive way. So these people that do have prescriptions and need it aren't getting stung and thrown into that stereotype. Any changes on the horizon?
Not at the moment. It's very frustrating. Last I heard in Melbourne, where I was for the last 2 years, was that the government came to the table and said, all right, we'll do a study on the effects of cannabis in driving. But from my understanding, they said we won't start for 6 months, and I think the study is going to take a year or longer to complete. So they've essentially just pushed making a decision back. The driving thing's interesting because, yes, with certain levels of THC, you shouldn't be driving. Not that you're going to probably drive very fast. You're probably just going to get pinged for driving 20 on an 80 zone because you're just going too slow. But
it's like a beer. Have one or two mid strengths and sit on that. Don't just start having shots of whiskey or whatever.
But they've got to. They're happy to put the trust in people with drinking and Valiums and things like that we say if you're intoxicated, don't drive. Why is it different with cannabis? Trust the person. If you're too intoxicated, don't drive. Okay, fine. If someone has some THC in the morning because it helps, with a bit of pain or something, and they've had a lot of CBD as well, so they're not intoxicated at all, then why should they be pinged when, like we said, someone loaded up on opioids can drive? It's frustrating, but they have to. Unfortunately, they have to go through this process because, yes, there are people who will abuse it and who are too intoxicated from THC and may lead to having a crash. So it's not quite as easy as saying, well, everyone's going to probably do the right thing because there are people going to do the wrong thing. So they've got to try and work out. There's no way you can detect the level, which is the problem. It's not like alcohol where you can detect the level of THC someone's had. All they can detect at the moment is, yes, it's there, or no, it's not.
Is that on the cards, though? Is there anything you'd probably be able to get blood work done and know sort of where levels are at, though, yeah?
Not
then
really.
that's getting blood work.
Not really.
No?
As far as roadside goes, they still. I think everyone in the world is trying to work out a way to work out the level of THC in someone, but it's tricky because, again, a certain level on someone is going to make them.
I've heard of people doing it the day before.
Yeah.
They haven't touched it that day and they're still getting pinged.
Yeah, so THC, we know it doesn't represent in your mouth. So THC will stay in your oral cavity until you've either cleaned your teeth or flushed it out, or it's been a certain amount of time. So if someone has inhalation is the way that coats the most of your mouth because of the smoke. So if someone was smoking the day before and they haven't had a good rinse of their mouth, they haven't had brushed their teeth, something to eat, then yes, the next day they can still test positive. Likewise, if it's been 2 or 3 days later, if the person hasn't got very good oral hygiene at all, they could have been, a bong and a cone piece is the worst because it's such a wide mouthpiece that it just coats everything. That yes, they might get pinged 2 or 3 days later. Against, if someone is using an oil, you just pop under your tongue there and they brush their teeth, have a rinse around, and then the next day they do the same thing and they're not intoxicated, then they should be fine to drive. But there's no 100% guarantee. And that's what I tell my patients. I say, you might be, but if you get pinged, you get pinged. And unfortunately, a lot of the time if they're pinged, they can end up in court, and it can go both ways, even if they do have a script. So it is super duper
frustrating. Subsidisation. So is there currently a bit of that on the cards, at the moment, or is that when it's got to do with obviously the oils or whatever it may be when they come to the health practitioners? Because if you got people that are on pension DSP? Like, is it becoming more of, I know we touched on that before, but is there subsidisation coming through? I'm just thinking, even when it's got to do with the First Nations component, when it's CTG, like Close the Gap, like, is it getting recognised through those channels? So
Not
then
yet.
it is getting, not yet?
Not yet,
Okay.
no. Like I said, there are companies that will do discounts for people on healthcare cards, concession cards and things like that, and they're pretty well priced products. But as far as CTG and those government funded things, no, it's not happening yet. I don't think that we'll get there unless one day it ever got listed on the PBS, the Pharmaceutical Benefit Scheme, which I don't think it will. But no, there's no.
You don't think?
Oh,
Is there reasons why? There's obvious reasons why, but what do you think there is?
this again, there's they don't understand it, they're scared of it, there's not enough evidence, blah blah blah. I think if this was first line medication, it would reduce the massive bill that the government pays for the PBS, because it might be able to help people reduce other medications and things like that. But that's my ultimate goal, would be to have it on the PBS. But I don't think. I think we're a fair way off that. If we can't even get a driving law through or something, I think it's a fair. If they're not even teaching it in the bloody med school, if they're not even teaching it at med school, then in the cannabinoid system, then yeah.
So where is all this, right? Because you're on the forefront here when it comes to not just the information that you're putting across, like how we're having a yarn now, but you can see, and not just see it, obviously hearing it, and that's where the majority of the people will be listening to this, but you're a proud advocate. So when you're looking at education, and it's like anything, like you need it across the board, that's where, things have fallen through the gaps. Like when you're looking at, the voice of Parliament, there was a lot of people that weren't on board with it. There was people who were. It didn't matter if you were black, white, or brindle. There was all sorts of propaganda and crap going on, and obviously that didn't meet the mark. So, but if it's looking at like an arm of, I don't know, is there an arm of advocates, or is it, or is it strong practitioners like yourself that are just trying to push the mold through? Are you going to locations doing talks in person? Are you getting the advocacy out there if it's just purely through social? So where can people go to get the right information so it's cutting through all the bullshit essentially?
Yeah, so we've got some sort of industry, even industry bodies that are sort of representing us. So AMCA, the Australian Medicinal Cannabis Association, and the ANZ-CCP, so Australian New Zealand Cannabis Clinicians Society. These groups that are doing that. So they're a body of people that are, not necessarily doctors. Some are doctors on there, but they're the ones that are trying to advocate and push, the College of GPs to offer more courses or more teaching to GPs around this topic. I don't know anyone's getting into the schools yet. There's lots of bodies for helping veterans, easier access and stuff like that. So there are these lobbying groups. There's the Drive for Change, which is a big one for THC and driving. There are these groups out there that are trying hard. You've got the legalised cannabis party that's not just about legalised, but also pushing, greater education. I think that's what we all want, is just, if I would love to get up on primetime TV and every channel had to go on to me, let me just talk about cannabis and explain it to everybody in the country and say, this is what it's about. Don't be so scared of it. If it's done properly, it can be this. And then, but it's a slow, bloody slow, frustrating process, and there's always red tape and barriers, and that's with trying to get anything through anywhere. You just goes on someone's desk. Oh, no, that's not mine, and then you got to go to someone else, and you got to wait for them to reply, and then no, that's too hard. Go to someone else, and then no, we don't accept that. You need to, it's just a lot of crap. But that's why I think maybe I might get in touch with Dave Pocock and see what he can do.
Mate, get on to him.
Yeah. Good idea.
Get on to him, because he's a voice for the people and being an independent. So he's just, taken on board what is logical and sings true. And if things have got promise, like things are going to be etched forward and brought to the floor, and then hopefully the rest down in the sitting on the red chairs there can eye certain things and get things over the line. And who knows, you might have some, federal government fund that might float over, because you guys, is it a lot of like self-funded, like when it's got to do with these advocacy groups and these doctors, like,
Yeah.
because that's a hard struggle.
Yeah. It is like the No More Zombie Veterans, which is a good one by Derek and Frosty. These are veteran guys who severe PTSD, were on a lot of pharmaceuticals. Life was shit. Found cannabis and now have totally turned their lives around. So they're campaigning. You can look them up. No More Zombie Veterans. Anyone who wants to support them, they're amazing. And they're the ones pushing for DVA to fund for different reasons apart from pain, to try and make the process easier for veterans. But again, it's all funded. It's all self-funded. I think maybe they can get some grants and that kind of thing, but a lot of time it's just self-funded charity kind of stuff, which makes it hard.
Come on, people, get amongst it. Throw some dollars in there. We need to get the message out. So looking at the next steps when it's got to do with like the survey that you've put out, and that's really comprehensive. There's 100. What are we looking at? I'm looking at it right now. Yeah, there's 191 pages. There's a lot going on, but that's necessary. That's what you need to collate to make sure that if you do get it over to a funding body, and then it's all the relevant information there. So what's the next step for people? Are they able to look at this, or is it more of a...
Share that if you want to. If you want to, share the link on there. People can have a look. Share the link. If people are using cannabis and they haven't done the survey yet, fill it out. It is extensive, but the questions only open up if you answer yes, kind of thing. So if it says, are you using cannabis to help with pain? You select no, then you don't have to answer all the questions on. You jump to the next section. So you just pick. So when you first look at it, it looks long because all the questions. When you look at the results, it looks long because all the answers are in there from every section. But anyone that's using it, do that, because the more people the more that we can get these surveys done, gives people like myself a bit more ammo when we go and talk to these people and they keep saying there's no evidence. I say, well, here is a snapshot right now of 700, 1,000 people that are using cannabis at the moment, and this is what they're saying. How do you ignore this? And then, when we were at the DVA, I was there with Derek and Frosty, and they told their story of how much it helped them. I said, how can you ignore these guys saying this? How can you ignore the results of this survey and keep asking me for bloody more evidence? Like, it's so frustrating. And we left in Canberra. We left that meeting feeling quite good. Haven't heard boo since. Not a beep. Nothing. And Derek's been hammering them, like, go, come on, guys, where are you? Like, they left there saying, we'll try and sort, promised everything. Haven't heard boo. And it's just,
because you're detailing, like, you got a bit of detail in there when it's in regards to, ages, like male, female, but the backgrounds of individuals too. It's not like you've got a pie chart and it's like 100%, typical stoners.
No,
like, you know what I mean?
Professionals, second way, you're a doctor, solicitor, or a lawyer, or a CEO, and there's a shit there. Yeah, some of my patients that I have on my books would blow people's minds if they knew that person. That's the thing. It's not. It doesn't dumb you down and slow you down. If it's used properly, it's just part of your life, and it's what some people need. A brain like mine that goes 1,000 miles an hour all day, every day, ADD, I sometimes need a break from that, or I sometimes need to slow it down where, the society's happy for me to go and drink alcohol, which led to me becoming an alcoholic. Now I don't drink because it was the only thing I did to shut my brain down, or give me Valium and I'll chew them until them. But I use some CBD, a little bit of THC to wind down, and then I'm the bad guy kind of thing. Like, it's funny that it works for so many people for different things. Because it's that whole plant. It's all the molecules going, and it's not just one molecule. It's going systemically in your body to balance your body out. So, mate, it's frustrating. It's frustrating.
I know. So, is there anything? So, is it a matter of leaving it up to the people to explore the survey, or is there anything that you wanted to sort of small bits that you want to extract that are important to broadcast here on the podcast?
It's just like talking about it like this and getting things like the survey out there. At the moment, I think there's 700 people on the results. I think there's 650, but 50 more people have done it since then. But, if I got that up to 5,000, 10,000, then, it takes one of the television companies to grab those results and start talking about them, and then putting pressure on the policymakers and, getting it more in the public eye. Having someone like myself talk about it, who knows what they're talking about, who can, I would just love to sit down with the policymaker. Just talk to me, ideally in a public setting so people can see what you say, but let's just have a chat. Let me see, why are you happy for doctors to prescribe this medication, yet it's so hard or not looked well upon for us to prescribe this medication? Let's just have a chat. And I want to know why. Just tell me, what's your reasoning? When I can present you with
that's it.
Stuff, why do you make it so hard?
When logic makes sense, I think that you need to propose a round table for down at Canberra round 2 down there.
Yeah,
so
yeah. And you look at the drinking culture in the country. Drinking and gambling. There's a pub on every corner. There is bottle shops everywhere. You watch sport, it's just alcohol and gambling ads. Everyone's happy to go and have a drink after work. I don't drink. A lot of us shouldn't drink. It doesn't agree with us. It doesn't agree with most people. Mm-hmm. Most people, if they could, I'm sure they would not drink. But why is it so bad if I wanted to go and have a smoke or something to wind down after work at the pub? Why can't I do that? You guys can all everyone can sit around and get pissed and go home and gamble and fight the missus and kick the cat and do whatever else goes on when you're drunk. Why can't I guarantee you no one's going to.
Well, that's it, the amount of I want yeah, like you highlighted something important there, like the amount of women that die from domestic violence is horrendous.
Yep, exactly.
Like, so if you took alcohol out of that equation, where are those numbers going to be?
Yep.
If you just strip that, and if you're obviously looking at the cannabis and how that would fold into, that's a hard task, because when you're looking at alcohol that's been established for so long and you can publicly get it anywhere and everywhere, and and then you can legally make that stuff at home also, and really drive up the alcohol content. But that's that's all over the shop, that is. But Dr. James Stewart, I just wanted to say I really appreciate your time and really having this long form conversation to explore this topic, because there's a lot of unknowns, and you've really put it in form in certain points that I think are going to really resonate, and not just resonate, make sense to people. And that doesn't matter if it's the people that want to explore that for themselves, but also if it's the clinical professionals that are out there, if there is going to prick open to really sort of take in this information. And hopefully they're some of the people that could be sitting at the round table too and really be a driving force, getting some of this stuff in over the line. So I really appreciate your time.
No worries. And I've got to add in again, guys, what I've said today is no way hard evidence. So please, because of what I've said today, like I said, don't think you go out and try it and it's going to be safe, blah, 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 blah. You still need to speak to your health professional about it, and if they don't understand it or know, then come and find a doctor like myself. I'll get Jake to put up some good clinics I recommend. Dr. Jim Connell from Hayday, Carolyn Bosack, and there's lots of good doctors out there. Speak to them first, because you need guidance. Like with any medicine, anything, you need a bit of guidance first to know how to use it properly. And again, everything I've said today about things that I've seen it help with people with, that's just been my experience. There's always people that it's not going to work for. There's always people that have had negative effects from it. So please don't take what I've said as gospel. There's no hard evidence behind it. Like everyone keeps saying, this is just what I've seen in my practice. And it is something that you still need to be safe with and take the precaution and use it properly through a healthcare provider who knows what they're talking about and under their guidance. This has not been a promotion for cannabis.
Beautiful. Dr. Stewart, really appreciate your time. And as said, that was a boatload of information that just sang true, makes sense, and I hope it does present to the floor, to the federal government, so you can have a whole bunch of people sitting at the round table and just telling it how it is, because there's a lot of people where it would benefit. It's just education. That's what the nation needs. So appreciate your time.
Thanks,
and look forward to the next chat.
Thanks, mate. Keep up the good work, buddy.
Awesome. Appreciate it. See, folks, solid yarn. It's really good how you really broke that down. And hopefully you get to sit at the table down at Canberra to really educate a lot of the politicians down there to make sure that certain things get over the line that have a positive effect to overall help the community. And if you like the podcast, hit that subscribe or follow button. And we've also got a Patreon page. The link is within the description. So if you want to roll with the squad and become a patron, that'd be great. And if you want to get in contact with me, you can get me via Instagram at streetrollandcheetah or email, one word, streetrollandcheetah@gmail.com. And we've also got a Facebook page, Keep Rolling with Jake Briggs. I'm on LinkedIn, Jake Briggs, so check it out. And want to thank our sponsors, Permobil Australia, the greatest electric wheelchairs in the land. Wouldn't be sitting in anything else but these 4 wheels right here, and they've got great assistive tech also. So righto, we'll see you on the next one.